Welcome to Unity Spiritual Center. Today we're talking about the second unity principle. And I changed my mind, Madeline. Would you put there it is. We're in a series looking at the unity principles. Number one, we worked on last week, there's only one presence and one power. Active. That means totally is the universe. And as my life, God the good. Period. And when we talked about it last week, this is the first step in understanding the spiritual path. The spiritual path is God is good, and all there is God, and there's nothing else. And then the next step on that is unity principle number 2. Our essence is of God. Everybody get that? Our essence is of God. And it goes on and says, this God essence is fully expressed in Jesus the Christ. And Jesus the Christ was the model for us. He said, these things I do, ye shall do even greater things. So what he did was he brought a model on how to return to the Father's house, or how to claim back our divine inheritance, okay? So we're going to look at essence, the word essence, okay? So, remember, our essence is of God. Next slide, do that. Okay? Oh, excuse me. Go to the next slide and then come back to that one. Okay? We're going to come back. Come back. I misinterpreted. I looked up the definition of essence in 2 different dictionaries. You would not believe, I checked 4 different dictionaries. They all have different but very similar definitions of the word essence. Okay? Merriam-Webster, which a lot of us use, the properties or attributes by means of which something can be placed in its proper class or identified as being what it is. So essence means what? Who you are. And the master teachers in the Bible say the essence is of God. Okay? And the next one is the inherent unchanging nature of a thing or class of things. The inherent unchanging nature. So by definition, we are unchanging nature of God. Can you deny that? See, the definition is there. Now, you can choose it or not choose it, but it's your choice. So that's this whole world we live in comes down to our choice of how much we take of it. And would you agree one of the most difficult things for us to accept is our nature is of God. And we're trained not to, because we're trained that we're guilty, we're sinful, and we're not good enough, so we have to hide that fact. So we walk through life feeling guilty, but yet our scripture says we're unchangeable to the nature of God. What's interesting is the idea lends itself through all the major religions of the world. I wasn't going to do this, but I will do it. This is Kriya Yoga. Paramahansa Yogananda brought Kriya Yoga to the United States. Roy G. Davis is one of his major disciples here. And in the ancient works, there's a group of, they're called sutras, but they would be chapters called Patanjali Sutras. And I've been reading these, frankly I've studied these, because these are the path to awakening that is spoken of in the New Testament. And all it does is dovetail with how to get where we want to go. And this says, and this is quoting Jesus. You see, understand, the spiritual teachers of the world that are true in what they're speaking use all references. So this is actually Roy G. Davis, through using Jesus' Jesus' words, okay? And this is from John 8:31 and 32. If you follow my teachings, which Jesus taught, then you are indeed my disciple, and you realize the truth through direct personal perception. That means you make the choice to understand it. Okay? Which is the same thing we're saying here. We are of the essence of God. Now, it doesn't matter whether you believe that or not. But see, that's the interesting thing. We all have a choice to make. First choice is, number one, God is everywhere present and in and is everything. Number two, which is the one we're talking about today, you are the essence of God, the good. And we're learning to follow the example of Jesus the Christ. Now, Unity has called itself a practical Christianity. So we teach what Jesus taught. So if we're going to do that, then we need to follow what is said. And in the Bible, it says, and I'm going to go to the next one, okay? By the way, I have a tendency to get really clear. I work on those ideas. Okay, so this is Genesis, right in the beginning. God created man in his own image, and the image of God he created him. Male and female, we added that, by the way. Seems to be a difference today. I don't understand it, and that's me. I admit that. Okay? So that's Genesis. First chapter of the Bible. Then we come down to Acts. Now, Acts is written by Luke. There's questions about that, a lot of the historians have, disagreements. But Luke wrote Acts, and this is Acts 17:20. For in him we live and move and have our being. So what does that mean? We have within us a spirit that is who we are. Okay? And then on to Paul, 1 Corinthians. Do you not know you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know how much clearer we can make it. There are at least 5 or 6 other verses in the Bible, easily pulled out. So we go back and look at it. Number one, God is everywhere present as an energy and a frequency. We are part of that. We are the energy of God living in a physical world. Okay? Those are basics. Now, what that means is, if we are of God, we're the essence of God, then we must have the attributes of God. That means the benefits. Anybody familiar with that? That means the ability to exercise divine essence, to live happily. And if you really understand, that's the metaphor for the Garden of Eden. And we started out in the world with the Garden of Eden. So how come we ain't in the Garden of Eden anymore? And I use that word on purpose, just to jar it. Because we have to get rid of the thought that we are slimy, no good, sinful jerks, which is what the society has. And unfortunately, we have a whole society program. I've been looking at this idea of social media. And social media is there just to create separation. I don't know about you. Anybody watch it? We all do. By the way, I no longer. I have people send me messages on Facebook. I do not look at Facebook. Okay? Now, none of you in here, but I have people that do it. And I just don't, I get notification and ignore it. Because what is it doing other than pitting me against and socializing me and giving somebody else a step up? So we are all one. We are all of God. And if you go back to the song we just sing, every face is holy. Every entity is holy. Every chair is holy. We are all holy in consciousness. Now, the problem is we're not living in a holy, I'm going to change that. We are apparently not living in a holy environment because we have things happen. We have death, we have accidents, we have issues, we have disease. By the way, Larry is here but he's sick. So we have all these issues we deal with. Where do they come from? I'm going to way out on a limb. Has anybody heard of epigenetics? And epigenetics is this new idea. When I was doing, well, I'm trying to remember exactly, but I remember attending classes where they said that genes are absolutely locked in place. And once you have a gene, you're going to have to live with that gene. So you have to deal with who you are. Okay, now we're finding that genes change. And that change is what creates change in our life. Because the genes are part of the chromosomes that react to who we are. They decide, I guess, that I'm male. They decide that I have bald hair, whatever it is. However, they're now realizing that genes can't be changed. And guess how they're changed? By extreme thought. Now, the biggest example they're using now is trauma. In other words, when somebody has trauma, it literally changes the genes. And when you worry all the time, it creates the disease. The genes switch on for the disease, and you get the disease. Anybody done that reading? It's all there. And science is now bringing that into our day-to-day world. And when I first got involved in this back in 1978, the idea is that if I think only good thoughts, I have only good experiences in my life. Now they're adding a scientific thing over here that when I learn to think right, the genes change just like a switch goes on and the good genes start working. Everybody got that? That's a big deal. Okay, so I'm adding that in the conversation. Okay? And you come over here and it says, do you not know you are God's temple? Yes or no?
Yes.
So we have a choice. The choice at this point in time is, who do I choose to be? If I know and have a choice now, and I'm willing to make that step, number one, to believe that God is everywhere present. Number two, that I am the essence of God. That is the first two steps. Because unless I understand that, at least in a possibility, there's no sense in doing what I need to do to get to that point. Okay, now Jesus has laid out this whole thing when he said the kingdom of heaven is within. And then he said it's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Okay, and then Paul comes in and says, think good thoughts. Whatever's happy, whatever's joyful, whatever's loving, whatever is good, whatever, and there's a whole list of those things, and that's what produces the Garden of Eden. So do we need more edification? See, and so we either do it or we don't do it. And this is where I've run into issues. Okay? The willingness to accept that we are actually of and imbued with divinity is the second step on our return to the Father's house. We are children of God and joint heirs of everything that implies. We accept it or we don't accept it. Now, in our modern day world, when we have a deficiency, we know it's like twice now I've had issues with my back. So I went to physical therapy. Everybody got it? So why did I go to physical therapy? To get the problem corrected by exercise. Anybody agree that if we go on a diet, we lose weight? Yes? Okay, we also know we're learning that if we eat the right foods, we're healthy. So if we have this problem over here, we change the food, we can get better. There are always therapies to improve where we are. The major therapy is start understanding that and doing what's necessary to return to the Father's house. And how do we do that? We can't know meditation. And ancient teachers, all the way up to today, say 20 minutes of meditation in the morning, 20 minutes in the afternoon, yes? And I've seen it through Kriya Yoga, Pranayama, contemplative centered prayer, etc., etc. Mindfulness prayer in the Buddhists, 20 minutes. And if you're brave and start getting used to it, you can add to it. There are writings that I have read about Charles Fillmore that he got up to 6 hours a day in pure meditation. Okay? Now, we are not asked to do that, but we're asked to do 20 minutes. Okay? Then prayer. Prayer means seeing only good. In other words, when we pray for just his family, I don't need to decide how to help them. The Father within, he doeth the work. All I have to do is connect, know that that connection is occurring, and miracles occur. Now, do I know that? No. Do I know that's possible? Yes. And that's the big step. But it's a willingness to understand that here I am, here's where I could be, and I'm doing the therapy or whatever's necessary to get to that point. So it's a commitment in life. And it's a commitment to avoid what's going on in the world. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a tendency to get involved in the world. Got involved in the world this morning because that thing didn't work. And we had to ask Valerie, and Valerie, by the way, came to the rescue again. Thank you.
But it worked out for you before I even got
I
back.
know, but it's still.
You plugged into spirit and it got resolved.
Yeah, I went over and sat quietly, and I was told, go try it again. But it's still that doubt. You see, if we don't have doubt, if we know that we know that we know, things happen. And the only way to know that we know that we know is to continue the therapy to know. And know that what I'm doing is creating neural structure in today's world that is going back to my original Christ self. And we use the word Christ self, but it's actually the world of homeostasis or returning to my natural being. Because we all have a natural being, and that natural being is there to provide for us in this mortal world. And if we, instead of getting tied up in the mortal world, I stay in the spiritual world, and the spiritual world creates the mortal world. And I keep looking for a simple, I keep looking for it, the answer, and the answer is all there. Okay, at least for me, I don't know about you, but I'm trying to impart to you that when I have a breakdown outside, it's because I'm not doing something here to bring myself back to who the Christ that I am. Now, it's not my fault, because I've been, anybody being influenced? I still go back to, we worked with a guy who used to say, I have to compete with your neighbors and friends who control your mind. Okay, and he was known as a great motivational guy at the time. And I think about that, and it's really my friends and neighbors. Okay, I went out this morning, the next door neighbor came out, he has a little boy, and I said, good morning. He said, morning. So I took offense. It was like, well, why doesn't he friendlier? Okay? And we used to be friendly, but for some reason, he's drawing back. Could be because I'm kind of weird. But there was an immediate judgment. Chris, did you see that interchange, by the way? Okay. But it is interesting, it really is. Okay? So we make judgments based upon what others give us. And the only true, credible source in our life is the Spirit within. The Father within, he doeth the work. I finished, yes.
It's interesting when you talk about that second principle, in the part of that Christ is our, like Jesus the Christ was our on this planet example. And when you talk about epigenetics and the fact that we can change our DNA, there's a verse in the Bible, and I can't remember what it is, about breaking generational curses.
Yes.
And it's like, to me, that feels so important to not be the worrier that my lovely mom was. You know, how do we take that knowledge, you know, that we are the essence of God, and how do we make those changes? And how do we look at our lives to see what needs to be changed?
It's interesting. And if we break it, see, that's the Father that's looking. That's the contemplation. And if you stop, like my mind was going on that one. Because anxiety is worry, is fear. Okay, where does fear come from? Danger, 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 danger. And we're trained in our world. And you go back to the Course of Miracles, Course of Love, there's either fear or love. And so the ego's choosing fear. Now, that's my rationalization. You might have yours, but it's still, the ego is still running my life.
Well, it's that whole conversation of back when the amygdala was to keep us from dinosaurs and stuff, or whatever, you know, tigers and stuff. And we haven't trained it to be rational. It still operates off of an old operating system rather than it's are we acting from the superconscious or are we acting from the subconscious?
It's really interesting. And science is picking up all kinds. We've got all these hippocampus, the amygdala, the pineal gland, the frontal lobe, the rear lobe. There's all these things in our brain that are there, and they're supposed to do this. Well, what are they doing? Okay, and we're now, a lot of science is starting to learn that. By the way, did you know all the stuff, like the net-like stuff around your heart and all this stuff is a repository for stem cells? And stem cells are those cells that can rejuvenate. And once we learn how to separate them and return them, in other words, you know, you can regrow heart tissue, they're proving all this. And this is all the latest research. Now, I don't want to get into proof. I'm just saying that's what we're going on. So we're learning all these things that go back to what we think. And also how well we take care of the temple, because we are temple. And stop and think about it. I don't know about you, but I'm a walking, talking miracle. A lot of you know my background. Okay? And yet, when I think about that, I'm still not perfect. So what am I creating? Not perfect. So we go back to what are we thinking is actually changing the genes and creating a body temple. So no matter what's interesting, they're now realizing that if I look at RJ and I'm thinking about him, I'm projecting my thoughts on him. So if I'm seeing him in love, what am I projecting? And we have no idea that we're affecting the personality of others. And that's part of this, when I wake up and realize how great Madeline is, she changes. Okay, it's not her, it's me and my thought of it. And these are things that they're now starting to learn, which goes right back to what you see. What's interesting is the daily word for today. Okay? Beautiful. My open heart discovers beauty all around me. So what am I looking at? Okay? There's a part here. My dear ones become even more beautiful to me when I pause to remember our fondest experiences and the love that binds us. So when I look at everybody, all of you with love, that actually creates better love. So this thing is so intertwined, and my experience is my mind can shift into those other things so quickly that I have to be constantly aware. And I do know, this I know, the more I do something, the more it becomes ingrained in neurological structure. Because you see it. You know, great pole vaulters become great pole vaulters because they keep doing it over and over again. Okay, a great singer has to get all those issues of singing, and we all have natural talents. It's just building on those talents. It's really interesting that my voice is starting to crack. Okay, I move through each day with my mind and heart open. Okay? Now even the most ordinary items, places, and circumstances become more and more precious and beautiful to me. And it's my choice. What am I doing? Okay? So we're right back. Number one, I have to accept everything I see as God. Number two, I am God, you are God, or good face is God. Okay? And then we're going to deal more next week. Okay? To come. I'm going to